Linda sat at the head of the large, polished mahogany table in the boardroom, the city skyline stretching out behind her through the floor-to-ceiling windows. At 52, she was a formidable presence, her sharp intellect and relentless drive propelling her to the top of her industry. As the CEO of a thriving tech company, Linda had built an empire from the ground up, transforming innovative ideas into lucrative realities. Her sharp business acumen and decisive leadership had earned her respect and admiration, not just from her employees but also from her peers in the industry. Her office, a testament to her success, was adorned with awards and accolades. The walls were lined with photographs capturing moments from her career, shaking hands with influential figures, speaking at conferences, and receiving prestigious awards. Each image told a story of perseverance and triumph, underscoring the journey of a woman who had defied odds to reach the pinnacle of her profession. At home, Linda's life appeared equally perfect. She and her husband, David, lived in an opulent mansion in an exclusive neighborhood. The house was a blend of modern elegance and comfort, filled with high-end furnishings and tasteful decor. Expansive gardens surrounded the property, meticulously maintained and offering a serene retreat from the bustling city. David, 55, was the epitome of a supportive spouse. While his career had not soared to the heights of Linda's, he found contentment in his steady job and his role within their family. David was a kind and patient man, dedicated to ensuring that their home was a place of harmony and support. He handled the household chores with efficiency, from managing finances to overseeing repairs and maintenance. His reliability provided Linda with the freedom to focus on her career without worrying about domestic responsibilities. Their 3 children, now adults, were the pride and joy of their lives. Each of them had followed their paths and found success in their endeavors. Emily, the eldest, was a doctor, compassionate and driven. Michael, their middle child, had taken a different route, becoming an artist known for his evocative sculptures. Sarah, the youngest, had pursued a career in law, advocating for social justice with fervor. Though they no longer lived at home, family gatherings were a cherished tradition, filled with laughter, shared memories, and lively conversations. Linda's relationship with David was rooted in mutual respect and understanding. They had been married for over 3 decades, their bond strengthened by shared experiences and the challenges they had faced together. David's unwavering support had been a cornerstone of Linda's success. He believed in her vision and abilities, often staying up late to listen to her ideas and offering thoughtful advice. Yet, beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, Linda felt a growing restlessness. The demands of her career had left little time for personal fulfillment, and as she entered her 50s, she began to question the choices she had made. Her days were consumed by meetings, strategy sessions, and corporate events, leaving her little room to explore her passions or indulge in moments of spontaneity. David, attuned to Linda's needs, tried to create a balance. He planned weekend getaways to their beach house, where they could unwind and reconnect. They enjoyed quiet dinners, long walks, and evenings spent watching the sunset over the ocean. These moments brought them closer, but Linda's internal struggle persisted. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, Linda found herself alone in her study. She gazed at the photographs on her desk, images of her children, their smiling faces beaming with pride, and a picture of her and David on their wedding day, filled with youthful hope and promise. She felt a pang of longing for those simpler times, before the pressures of her career had taken precedence. As she reflected on her life, despite her successful career and seemingly perfect life, Linda craved excitement and youth. Her days were meticulously planned, every minute accounted for, and her nights were often spent reviewing reports or attending networking events. The thrill of her business achievements, while gratifying, left a lingering sense of emptiness. She longed for something that could reignite her spirit, something beyond the predictable routine of her life. Enter Jason, her 27-year-old secretary. Jason was everything Linda was not: youthful, carefree, and full of vitality. He had joined the company fresh out of college, bringing with him a sense of energy and optimism that was contagious. Linda noticed him immediately. His charm, intelligence, and easygoing nature were a stark contrast to the often intense and high-stakes environment she navigated daily. Their interactions began innocently enough. Jason was attentive, always quick to offer assistance or a listening ear. He had a knack for anticipating Linda's needs, whether it was a fresh cup of coffee just the way she liked it or a perfectly timed compliment that brightened her day. Linda found herself looking forward to their conversations, the way he would make her laugh, and the genuine interest he showed in her stories. The shift from professional to personal was gradual. It started with after-hours work sessions that extended into dinner dates, under the pretense of discussing business strategies. Linda felt a rush of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. Jason's admiration and youthful enthusiasm made her feel alive, desired, and appreciated in ways she had almost forgotten. One evening, after a particularly long day, Linda and Jason shared a bottle of wine in her office. The city lights twinkled outside, casting a soft glow in the dimly lit room. Their conversation drifted from work to more personal topics, hopes, dreams, and fears. There was an undeniable connection between them, a spark that had been growing steadily. As the night wore on, the boundaries blurred, and they found themselves sharing a passionate kiss that left Linda breathless. The affair began in earnest after that night. It was thrilling and exhilarating for Linda, who felt rejuvenated by Jason's attention and passion. They met in secret, stealing moments whenever they could. Lunch breaks turned into stolen kisses, and business trips provided the perfect cover for their clandestine rendezvous. For Linda, these encounters were a welcome escape from the monotony of her structured life. As their relationship deepened, Linda's behavior began to change. She became more vibrant, her eyes sparkling with a new light. Colleagues noticed her newfound energy, attributing it to her continued success. David, however, sensed something different. He saw the late nights, the unexplained absences, and the way Linda seemed distant even when she was physically present. David had always trusted Linda implicitly. Their 30 years of marriage were built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. But lately, something had changed. Linda's late nights at the office, her sudden trips, and her distant demeanor had all raised alarms in David's mind. He had tried to dismiss his suspicions, convincing himself that Linda's behavior was simply the result of the pressures from her demanding career. Yet, a nagging feeling persisted, gnawing at his peace of mind. David's suspicions grew, but he chose to ignore them, not wanting to confront the possibility of betrayal. He hoped it was just a phase, a result of Linda's demanding job. But the signs became harder to dismiss. One afternoon, David decided to surprise Linda with lunch. He arrived at her office unannounced, but no one is in the company on that day. As he walked down the hallway toward Linda's office, David noticed that the door was slightly ajar. Curious, he peered inside and froze at the sight before him. His heart sank. Linda was sitting on Jason's lap, doing the thing passionately. She has no clothes on, her fingers entwined in his hair, their faces inches apart. The shock and pain in David's eyes were palpable. The room seemed to shrink around David as a rush of emotions flooded through him. Shock, betrayal, anger, and deep, searing hurt. His hands trembled as he pushed the door open, unable to contain his feelings any longer. "WTF is this?" he yelled, his voice cracking with the weight of his pain. Linda and Jason sprang apart, startled by the intrusion. Linda's eyes widened in shock, but quickly, a steely resolve replaced her initial surprise. She stood up, her expression hardening. "David, what are you doing here?" she demanded, her tone cold and unyielding. David's heart pounded in his chest. "What am I doing here? What are you doing? How could you, Linda? How could you do this to us?" His voice was raw, filled with a mixture of disbelief and anguish. Linda crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "I'm a businesswoman. I can sleep with anyone I please," she said, her words cutting through the air like a knife. The casual cruelty of her statement stunned David, leaving him reeling. "Is that really how you see it?" David's voice was barely above a whisper, the pain evident in his eyes. "After everything we've been through, after all the years we've spent together, you can just throw it all away like this?" Linda's expression remained stoic, but deep down, a flicker of doubt and regret began to surface. Yet, her pride and stubbornness kept her from admitting any weakness. David, our marriage hasn't been perfect. I felt trapped, unfulfilled. Jason makes me feel alive again. The words hung heavy in the air, and David felt a profound sense of loss. The woman he had loved and supported for decades was now a stranger, her heart seemingly closed off to him. He took a step back, struggling to breathe. I can't do this, Linda. I can't be in a marriage where there's no respect, no loyalty. With those words, David turned and walked out of the office, leaving Linda standing there, a mix of emotions swirling within her. She watched him go, a part of her wanting to call him back, to explain, to make things right. But another part of her clung to the defiance, the belief that she deserved the excitement and passion she had found with Jason. As the door closed behind David, Linda felt a pang of regret, but she quickly buried it. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back. Little did she know, this confrontation was just the beginning of a series of events that would unravel the carefully constructed life she had built, leading her down a path of unforeseen consequences and profound heartache. In the days that followed, the news of the affair spread like wildfire throughout the company. Whispers and gossip filled the hallways, and Linda's reputation began to tarnish. Her once loyal employees now questioned her judgment, and the trust she had built over years of hard work started to crumble. Despite the turmoil, Linda clung to Jason, believing that their relationship was worth the sacrifices she had made. However, the initial thrill of the affair began to wane, and Linda started to see the cracks in their relationship. Jason's youthful exuberance now felt like immaturity, and his lack of experience in navigating life's complexities became glaringly apparent. The passion she had mistaken for love was fleeting, and the reality of her choices began to set in. The confrontation with David had set off a chain reaction, leading Linda down a path of regret and unforeseen consequences. As she grappled with the fallout of her actions, she realized that the excitement and passion she had sought had come at a devastating cost. David stood in the doorway of the house he had called home for decades, a suitcase by his side and an expression of deep sorrow etched on his face. The weight of Linda's betrayal was too much to bear, and staying in the place filled with memories of their life together was unbearable. He needed distance, space to heal and process the pain. With a heavy heart, he turned away, leaving behind the life he had built with Linda, the woman he had loved unconditionally. David moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, a stark contrast to the luxurious home he once shared with Linda. The apartment was modest, with minimal furnishings and simple decor. It was quiet, almost eerily so, but it provided him with the solitude he needed. He immersed himself in his work, trying to fill the void left by Linda's absence. Evenings were the hardest, the silence amplifying his loneliness and the ache of his broken heart. Meanwhile, Linda felt a strange sense of relief. The end of her marriage, while painful, also felt like the lifting of a burden. She was free to pursue the life she had envisioned with Jason, her young lover. Their relationship was a whirlwind of passion and excitement, a stark contrast to the stable but predictable life she had with David. Linda and Jason wasted no time in making their union official, getting married in a small, private ceremony. Moving into Linda's luxurious home, the couple indulged in the pleasures of their newfound life together. The mansion, with its opulent furnishings and expansive grounds, became the backdrop for their romance. They hosted lavish parties, filled with laughter and music, and enjoyed spontaneous getaways to exotic locations. Linda reveled in the attention and admiration Jason showered upon her. His youth and vitality made her feel alive, rejuvenated, and desired in ways she had almost forgotten. Their days were filled with excitement and adventure. They explored the city, dined at the finest restaurants, and attended exclusive events. Linda felt a rush of exhilaration each time they stepped out together, the world seeming to sparkle with new possibilities. She was living the life she had dreamed of, free from the constraints of her previous marriage. However, beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, cracks began to form. Jason's youthful exuberance, which had initially drawn Linda to him, started to feel like recklessness. His lack of experience in managing a household and finances became apparent, causing friction between them. Linda found herself taking on more responsibilities, the very ones she had hoped to escape by leaving David. The differences in their personalities and life stages also became more pronounced. Jason's carefree attitude clashed with Linda's need for structure and stability. Their conversations, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, now often ended in disagreements and misunderstandings. The passion that had once fueled their relationship started to wane, replaced by frustration and resentment. Linda's business also began to suffer. The scandal of her affair had not only tarnished her reputation but also caused a rift within her company. Employees who had once been loyal and dedicated now questioned her judgment and leadership. The gossip and whispers that permeated the office created a toxic work environment, further straining Linda's ability to lead effectively. As the initial excitement of their relationship faded, Linda found herself reflecting on the choices she had made. The freedom and passion she had sought came at a significant cost, one that she had not fully anticipated. She missed the stability and support David had provided, the quiet moments of companionship and understanding that had formed the foundation of their marriage. One evening, as Linda sat alone in the opulent living room, she felt a profound sense of emptiness. The luxurious surroundings, once a symbol of her success and independence, now felt hollow and devoid of meaning. She realized that in her pursuit of excitement and youth, she had lost something far more valuable, a sense of true connection and love. David, meanwhile, had begun to find peace in his new life. The initial pain of separation had slowly given way to a sense of acceptance and healing. He reconnected with old friends, rediscovered hobbies he had long forgotten, and began to build a new life for himself. The distance from Linda allowed him to see their relationship with clarity, acknowledging the good times they had shared while also recognizing the flaws that had ultimately led to their separation. As months turned into years, both Linda and David continued on their separate paths, each grappling with the consequences of their choices. The separation, while painful, became a turning point in their lives, leading them to unexpected places of growth and self-discovery. Linda, blinded by love and passion, welcomed Jason's involvement. She saw it as a sign of his commitment and desire to be a part of every aspect of her life. Jason started attending business meetings, offering suggestions, and gradually gaining the trust of Linda's associates. His youth and charisma were assets, and he used them to his advantage, charming everyone around him. Jason's influence grew, and Linda began to rely on him more and more. He convinced her to delegate important tasks to him, arguing that she needed to take better care of herself and enjoy the fruits of her labor. Linda, tired from years of relentless work, readily agreed. She trusted Jason implicitly, believing that he had her best interests at heart. Under the guise of helping Linda, Jason began to manipulate her business decisions. He persuaded her to make risky investments and questionable financial moves, always presenting them as opportunities for greater success. Linda, eager to maintain her lavish lifestyle and secure their future together, followed his advice without hesitation. Over time, Jason's true intentions became more apparent to those around Linda, but she remained oblivious. Her closest friends and business associates grew concerned, noticing the rapid changes and the increasing control Jason exerted over her. They tried to warn Linda, but she dismissed their concerns, convinced that Jason was her perfect partner. The turning point came when Jason proposed a major business deal that required Linda to transfer significant assets into a joint account. He assured her that it was a strategic move to protect their wealth and streamline their finances. Blinded by her love for him, Linda agreed and signed the necessary documents without a second thought. With access to Linda's accounts, Jason's plan quickly escalated. He siphoned off large sums of money, transferring them to offshore accounts and making discreet but substantial withdrawals. Linda's financial empire, meticulously built over decades, began to crumble. She noticed discrepancies in her accounts and confronted Jason, but he always had plausible explanations that assuaged her fears. The final blow came one fateful evening when Linda returned home to find the mansion eerily quiet. Jason was nowhere to be found. Panic set in as she frantically searched the house, calling his name. Her calls went unanswered, and a sinking feeling of dread washed over her. She rushed to her office and checked her financial records, only to discover that her accounts had been emptied. Linda's heart pounded as the reality of her situation dawned on her. Jason had meticulously orchestrated her downfall, manipulating her trust and love to gain control over her business and assets. He had married her for financial gain, and now he had disappeared, leaving her bankrupt and homeless. The luxurious mansion, once a symbol of her success and independence, now felt like a gilded cage. Linda was devastated, the weight of her choices crashing down on her. She had lost everything, her business, her wealth, and the love she had believed in so blindly. Desperation and regret overwhelmed her as she realized the extent of Jason's betrayal. Linda's once vibrant world was reduced to ruins. She moved out of the mansion, unable to afford its upkeep. She wandered the streets in a daze, the harsh reality of her situation sinking in deeper with each step. Her once luxurious life had evaporated, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and a few meager belongings in a tattered suitcase. The city, which had once been the backdrop for her success, now felt cold and indifferent, a stark reminder of her downfall. She sought refuge in homeless shelters, their dimly lit halls and crowded rooms a far cry from the opulence she had known. Each night, as she lay on a narrow cot, Linda replayed the events that had led her here. The memories of Jason's betrayal were fresh and raw, but even more painful was the thought of her children, their faces filled with disappointment and hurt. Linda had hoped that her children, despite their anger, might offer her some solace, some support. But when she reached out to them, she was met with a wall of resentment. They were furious at how she had treated their father, and their responses were cold and curt. "Mom, I can't believe you did this to Dad," her eldest son, Michael, had said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You made your bed, now you have to lie in it." Her daughter, Emily, was even more direct. "You betrayed us all, Mom. How can you expect us to stand by you now?" The words cut deep, each one a reminder of her actions and their consequences. Her youngest, Jack, didn't even respond to her calls or messages, his silence a painful testament to the broken bond between them. Days turned into weeks, and Linda's despair grew. She wandered the city aimlessly, the vibrant energy of the streets a stark contrast to her inner turmoil. She found herself frequenting public libraries, not to read, but to find a warm place to sit and gather her thoughts. The once proud businesswoman now blended into the background, just another face in the crowd. Her nights were the hardest. Linda would curl up on her cot in the shelter, trying to drown out the noises around her, coughs, whispers, the occasional sobs of fellow residents. Sleep was elusive, her mind a whirlpool of regret and sorrow. She would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about David. She wondered how he was coping, whether he had found peace without her. The memory of his face, twisted in pain and betrayal, haunted her. Linda's physical appearance began to reflect her inner turmoil. The stress and hardship took their toll, and the confident, polished woman she once was became a shadow of her former self. Her hair, once carefully styled, now hung limp and unkempt. Her clothes, once tailored and fashionable, were now ill-fitting and worn. She avoided mirrors, unable to face the reflection of her own downfall. Years had passed since Linda's life had fallen apart, and the scars of her choices were still fresh. She lived a humble existence, scraping by with odd jobs and the occasional help from the shelter community that had become her reluctant family. The luxurious life she once knew was a distant memory, replaced by a harsh reality of survival and regret. Linda had aged significantly in those years. Her once vibrant eyes were now dim with sorrow, and her body, once the picture of health, was frail and worn. She walked with a slight stoop, the weight of her past bearing down on her shoulders. Every day was a struggle, and every night was filled with restless dreams of what could have been. One chilly afternoon, as Linda walked through the bustling streets of the city, she decided to take a detour through the park where she and David had spent so many happy moments. The park was a place of solace for her, a small slice of tranquility in an otherwise chaotic world. As she walked, the memories flooded back: picnics with the children, romantic walks with David, the laughter and love they once shared. Lost in her thoughts, Linda didn't notice the couple walking towards her until they were almost upon her. She glanced up and her heart skipped a beat. It was David, looking happier and more content than she had seen him in years. He was walking hand in hand with a woman, a warm smile on his face. The woman was attractive, with an air of confidence and grace. They looked deeply connected, their laughter and easy conversation a stark contrast to Linda's solitary existence. Linda's heart pounded in her chest, a painful reminder of everything she had lost. She stood frozen, unable to move or look away. David's eyes met hers for a brief moment, and she saw a flicker of recognition. His smile faltered, and an unreadable expression crossed his face. He whispered something to the woman, and they changed direction, walking away from Linda. The sight of David with someone else, happy and content, was too much for Linda to bear. Her breath came in ragged gasps as the pain of her choices and their consequences hit her like a tidal wave. Memories of their life together flashed before her eyes, the love, the betrayal, the ultimate downfall. She clutched her chest, the pain radiating through her body, more intense than anything she had ever felt. She stumbled to a nearby bench and collapsed onto it, her vision blurring as the pain intensified. The world around her seemed to dim, and she felt herself slipping away. Her mind raced, filled with images of David, their children, and the life she had destroyed. Regret washed over her in waves, each one more powerful than the last. In those final moments, Linda's thoughts turned to David. She remembered the look of hurt and betrayal in his eyes the day he discovered her affair, the pain she had caused him and their children. She wished she could take it all back, to make different choices, to be the woman they had needed her to be. But it was too late for regrets and second chances. As the pain in her chest reached its peak, Linda's body convulsed, and she collapsed to the ground. Passers-by rushed to her aid, their concerned voices a distant murmur as darkness closed in around her. She felt a profound sense of loneliness, a cold realization that she was dying alone, far from the family she had once cherished. Linda's life flashed before her eyes in those final moments, the triumphs and the failures, the love and the loss. She saw her children's faces, remembered their laughter and the warmth of their embraces. She saw David, the man she had loved and betrayed, and wished she could tell him how sorry she was. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered a final, heartfelt apology, hoping somehow it would reach him. And then, as the darkness enveloped her, Linda's body went still. Her heart, broken by years of regret and sorrow, finally gave out. The life she had once known, the empire she had built and lost, faded into nothingness. She passed away in the park, a place that had once been filled with so much joy, now the final resting place of a woman who had lost everything. David and his new partner, unaware of the tragedy that had just unfolded, continued their walk through the park. They paused by a fountain, the sound of the water a soothing backdrop to their conversation. David felt a strange sense of unease, a whisper of a memory tugging at his consciousness. He shook it off, focusing on the present and the happiness he had found again. Life moved on, as it always does, but the park would forever hold the memory of Linda's final moments. She had paid the ultimate price for her choices, her story a cautionary tale of love, betrayal, and the consequences of losing sight of what truly matters. Linda's body lay still in the park, her life extinguished in a moment of profound regret and sorrow. The passers-by who had rushed to her aid stood in somber silence, their faces etched with concern and confusion. An ambulance arrived, the paramedics working swiftly but futilely to revive her. Her heart, weakened by years of stress and heartbreak, had finally given out. Linda was pronounced dead on the scene, her story coming to a quiet and lonely end. News of Linda's death spread slowly. She had distanced herself from so many people in her life that there were few left to mourn her passing. The once celebrated businesswoman who had commanded boardrooms and orchestrated grand ventures was now a cautionary tale whispered among the circles she had once moved in so confidently. Her death, much like the latter years of her life, was marked by solitude and the stark absence of those who once loved her. In the aftermath, Linda's children were informed of her passing. Michael, Emily, and Jack received the news with a mixture of shock and complicated grief. They had tried to move on from the betrayal, burying their hurt under layers of busy lives and new commitments. But the news of their mother's death unearthed a flood of memories and emotions they had struggled to keep at bay. Michael, the eldest, took the news the hardest. He had been closest to his mother before the affair shattered their family. Memories of childhood, of Linda's unwavering support and pride in his achievements, collided painfully with the recollection of her betrayal. He found himself grappling with a deep sense of loss and unresolved anger, struggling to reconcile the mother he had loved with the woman who had caused so much pain. Emily, the middle child, felt a wave of sadness mixed with a bitter relief. She had always been more pragmatic, dealing with the fallout of their mother's choices with a steely resolve. Her anger had been fierce, but now, faced with the finality of Linda's death, she felt an unexpected sorrow. Emily mourned not just the mother who had betrayed them, but the potential for reconciliation that was now forever lost. Jack, the youngest, had harbored the deepest wounds. His silence in the years since their family's disintegration spoke volumes of his hurt and disappointment. When he learned of Linda's death, his first reaction was a numb disbelief. He had envisioned many scenarios in which he might confront his mother, demand explanations, and perhaps find some closure. Now, those possibilities were gone, leaving him with a hollow ache that seemed impossible to fill. David, upon hearing the news, experienced a profound sense of closure mixed with sadness. He had rebuilt his life, found happiness with another woman, and moved on from the betrayal that had once devastated him. Yet, Linda had been a significant part of his life, the mother of his children, and her death marked the end of a long and tumultuous chapter. He felt a deep sorrow for the woman she had become, her potential wasted on a quest for excitement that led to her destruction. Linda's funeral was a modest affair, attended by a handful of old friends and business associates who had not entirely severed ties. Her children attended, standing together in a silent show of unity. The ceremony was brief, the eulogy touching on Linda's accomplishments while carefully sidestepping the more controversial aspects of her life. There were no grand speeches, no outpouring of emotion, just a quiet, respectful farewell to a woman who had once shone brightly and then faded into obscurity. As the coffin was lowered into the ground, each of Linda's children grappled with their own thoughts and feelings. Michael placed a single white rose on the coffin, a gesture of love and forgiveness that he hoped might bring him some peace. Emily stood stoically, tears streaming down her face, the finality of the moment hitting her with unexpected force. Jack, his face etched with sorrow, whispered a private goodbye, his heart heavy with unresolved feelings. David, standing apart from the others, watched with a mix of emotions. He felt a sense of closure, but also a deep sadness for what might have been. He held his new partner's hand, drawing strength from her presence. Life had moved on, but the shadows of the past lingered, a reminder of the choices that had led them all to this moment. In the days that followed, Linda's death became a topic of quiet reflection among those who had known her. Her story served as a stark reminder of the destructive power of betrayal and the importance of loyalty and integrity. The woman who had once sought excitement and youth at the expense of her family's happiness had paid the ultimate price. Her legacy was one of heartbreak and loss, a cautionary tale for those who might be tempted to follow a similar path. Linda's quest for excitement had led to her ultimate downfall. She had lost sight of the values that once guided her, and in the end, she found herself alone and forgotten. Her life, once so full of promise and potential, ended in tragedy, a poignant reminder of the fragile nature of success and the enduring importance of love and loyalty.